YouTube, welcome back. I've been playing, I'm really enjoying Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That name is hard to say on my Twitch channel, and I'm actually still really early on in Act 1, and I have not been able to stop thinking about this game for the last week, and I'm so excited to jump back into it later today. But I found this video that popped up on my newsfeed on YouTube about its wild 6-year development cycle, and I think it's worthwhile for us to maybe understand the game a little bit more. Hopefully no spoilers in here, if spoiler we, but here we go. I've heard a lot of people glaze up this game, especially because of its development cycle. Something about like the writer was from Reddit, something about the composer was from SoundCloud, something about this whole team is only 33 people. So let's learn a little bit more about it.
This is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, just 1 year into development. This footage you're seeing was made with the sole purpose of trying to find voice actors for the main characters. In fact, the creator of the game would literally be posting this to Reddit in order to find voice actors for their characters.
So it was the voice actors that came from Reddit? Hi, Turtle. Hello.
And from that same Reddit post, the creator would also find a lead writer, of which also had no experience in working in games before. In fact, her previous role was an investor at a private equity company. To top it off, the composer for the game's soundtrack had never written a game soundtrack before. And he was brought on after the director of the game found him off of SoundCloud. And
all right, so it's all true? Holy.
This in the perspective, most AAA games like Fortnite or Call of Duty are backed by hundreds of developers across dozens of different departments. So this begs the question, how did a team that's smaller than the Call of Duty microtransaction department craft the most visually incredible and most impactful RPG we've seen in years?
Nah, we already played through this. We're okay. Although I have to say, before you dive into it, good sir. Why is this? What is this channel? Pounder McNasty. First name Pounder, last name McNasty. All right, Mr. McNasty. Before you dive into it, I have to say 300 people or whatever working on like one feature, which is microtransaction for COD. You know, 90% of those devs aren't doing shit. When you have that many people working on so little, you know, there's just not enough work to go around to feed 300 people. That makes no sense. Hold on. I lost tracking. That makes no sense. Maybe that's why, maybe that's why some companies don't succeed, because you're paying for a bunch of people that don't do anything. Anyways.
Expedition 33's journey began in late 2020, but the first concept started 4 years before that. Guillaume Broche, who was the founder of Sandbox Interactive and the director of Expedition 33, was at Ubisoft for roughly 4 years. From 2016 up until 2019, he would work on games like The Division 2 and Ghost Recon Breakpoint. After those
Are those big games, chat? I don't know anything about first-person shooter. They don't all work in the creative part. Data analysts, economics, trends, researchers, and so stuff. See, the thing is, when I understand that. I've worked in tech companies. I understand that part. But when the headliners on news, like news headlines, just say, 300 devs. Like, it's really hard to understand exactly what they're saying and how they're counting that. And, you know, and they're just kind of painting a certain picture that they want you to believe, right? Anyways, are those? Oh, they're garbage games. Oh shit. Okay.
Those two games shipped, he was put in a narrative lead role for a game franchise called Might and Magic. And like many of you right now, I had no idea this game franchise even existed.
Me neither.
But apparently, the franchise is a mobile game owned by Ubisoft Shanghai, and Broche was leading the narrative for this franchise. And
maybe that's why we haven't heard about it. It's a mobile game in China. I don't think think it ever took off here.
As you would expect from leading narrative on a mobile game designed to extract as much money as possible from players, Guillaume got bored with the work that he was doing on the team and really felt like there was no impact to what he was doing. And during this time, he had ambitions that went beyond being shoehorned into a mobile gacha game. He knew that a game like Expedition 33 would never be greenlit.
This photo goes hard. This is sick. Holy, is this like concept art back in the days? Wow. Might and Magic is really old and insanely popular. Oh. See, I am very young. And I've never heard of these old boomer games. Boomer games. What does a lead narrative mean? Like his position, lead narrative developer? What does that mean? Like, are you working on story? Like, what feature of the game are you in charge of? What does that mean?
By Ubisoft. So he quit his job in order to pursue his ambition. Alongside him, Tom Guillaume had the same ambitions as the director, so he would also leave Ubisoft and join the infant team. With the director writing up the narrative and Tom who had expertise on how Unreal Engine worked, the small grassroots team would begin by exploring Unreal Engine 4. While the director was messing around with Unreal Engine, the original prototype for Clair Obscur was supposed to be related to time. So when he had to save the project on his computer, he had to find a name for the project file. So what would the project be called? Well...
What is this? Is this also proof of concept?
So what would the project be called? Well... the game's related to time, so maybe Hourglass. Well, Sans Fall in an Hourglass. Okay, Sans Fall is the working name of the game. And from that point on, the game's internal working name would be Sandfall. Even to this...
That is so cool. Wait, that's really cool. I think that's sick. Oh my gosh. I want a code name like that. That's really sick. Project Sandfall. Whoa! Woo! That sounds cool.
This date. With Tom at the helm as co-founder and CTO, and Guillaume as CEO and also a co-founder. They would embark on their expedition to create a brand new world by
expedition.
themselves.
Get it? He said expedition.
Now that the studio had been founded, it was time to actually build up the game. Since Guillaume wanted this game to have a big focus on narrative, he began reaching out anywhere he could to find people who would be interested in helping the passion project evolve into something a bit more serious.
So he went on Reddit.
Created this post on the subreddit r/record this for free, looking to cast actors for the main roles of the game, including, of course, Mayel. One of the main...
Is Mayel name pronounced Mayel or Male or Mel? I definitely pronounced her name Male until someone corrected me. Yeah. Oh my gosh. r/record this for free. Is that still a real thing?
Many people who auditioned from this Reddit post was Jennifer Schvedberg-Yen. She got one of the leading roles as an actor. However, once she joined the team, it was pretty clear that her impact would be most noticed in a writer position, so she became lead writer on the game. Despite the growing teams, the co-founders and Jennifer Yen said that they wore many different hats during the game's production.
Of course, you would have to. This team is like, at this point, what, like 4 or 5 people? You're gonna have to do a little bit of everything. That's just typical of startups. You gotta dabble. You got your hands in every cookie jar out there.
Her involvement would span from story to gameplay to art and all over the project. At this point, the small team continued prototyping and development on the game, but the team started the hunt for a composer at the same time. The co-founders began their hunt for a composer by reaching out to the most popular composers in the industry, like Hans Zimmer, Johnny Paisano, Danny Elfman, and... just kidding.
Oh, I was gonna say, it would be cool if they try to contact like old school JRPG from composers from Japan. That would be cool.
he began his search on SoundCloud.
Oh.
That's where he found Lorien Testart. And at this point, Lorien had never worked on a game before, but caught the attention of the co-founders based off the work he's done on his SoundCloud. I am not making this up. The composer of Expedition 33, one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a video game, had never worked on a video game soundtrack before.
Wow.
Oh, and actually, it wasn't SoundCloud. It was even crazier than that. One night, the director went on an obscure gaming forum with like 10 people on it. And he made a post asking if anybody would want to join his team as a composer. And out of sheer luck, Lorien Testart had also randomly found this forum for the first time, just an hour after the post was made.
What?
The hunt to expand the team wouldn't end just there.
What? Let me get this straight. What are the odds? Obscure forum in some corner of the internet. Nobody really uses it. Random ass guy posts a post. Like, that site saw at least 2 new users that night, and that was probably more than it has seen in like years. And then they collabed and then became one of the greatest soundtrack in recent years. You can't say, all right, that's just fate. I don't know if that's a little bit too spiritual, but I do believe that there is somewhat of a higher power, you know? That's just fate. That's not a coincidence. That's just meant to be. That's really cool. I'm starting to understand why the fans of this game are so protective and, for lack of better words, crazy about defending it. That's a simulation. Yeah, that's like somebody out there, some big spiritual person out there is like kicking their feet going like, haha, I orchestrated all of this from behind the scenes. Oh, that's really cool. To borrow one of my, and like how they found the writer as well is just somebody who applied to be a voice actress and then turned out to be a really good writer. That's really cool. You know, to borrow a line from one of my favorite characters from one of the manga series that has influenced my life the most, which was XXX Holic. I think I've talked about it before. There's the main character in that series, Yuko-san, who always said that there is no such thing as coincidence. There's only hitsuzen, which I think roughly translates to predestined events. I believe it. That's really cool.
Wouldn't end just there. They would also find the studio's art director too. Nicholas Maxon Francome would join the studio during the founders' hunt through online forums. The core development team of 6 developers would continue to work on the prototype for Expedition 33, driven by a cohesive vision of what they wanted the game to be.
Give me a second. Hold on. If you look at his LinkedIn, Sandfalls Interactive, ESA, I don't know what that means, but does this guy also had no art direction experience before this? It seems like everybody else is a newbie. That's really, really cool. Hi, Jera. Hi, Richard. Hi.
Expedition 33. Driven by a cohesive vision of what they wanted the game to be from the very beginning, the teams spent the majority of 2020 building out the studio first, and then towards the end of the year, the game itself. Everyone was on the same page here and had the same goals as each other: to make one of the best reimaginings of a classic JRPG that anybody will ever play.
I have to say, from what I've played, this game is a love letter to old school JRPGs that I grew up on. There's so many features that I feel like have been lost to the times, that people don't really develop those features anymore. One of which being like the world map, which is traversable. Instead of just giving you a flat map and with like a few points on it, and then you can use your controller to fast travel, they make you run through the world. I miss that. They don't do that anymore. I really, really liked it. Oh, okay, that is really creepy. Oh, that is really creepy. That's so fucking creepy. Ah, go away.
By April 2021, Sandfall moved into a bigger office, and the core development team working on Expedition 33 started to expand.
Montpellier.
The team went from 6 employees to now more than 15 working on the game.
That's
comprising
very
mostly
fast
of
growth.
junior level engineers who didn't really have any experience
Oh, yeah. All the experience they had here, June to September of 2019, September 2019 to January 20, those are internships. January 2020 to October 2020, that's a contract work or an internship. Wow.
Experience in making games before, but were just as ambitious as the rest of the studio. The
You
once
worked at IKEA.
grassroots passion project was starting to evolve into something bigger. By mid-2021, they were putting the finishing touches on a newer, rebooted demo. Something small, but was polished enough
Very
to attract
red.
attention.
Very
The
red.
original version of Expedition 33 was more Victorian, but these were all assets
This is very steampunk. Oh, I'm glad they made the change. It's like steampunk and cyberpunk kind of in one, but I'm glad they changed it to more of like a distinctive French representation, because I feel like steampunk and also cyberpunk are so overused. Give me something new.
comprised of the Unreal Engine asset store, just as a quick way to rapidly create a simple prototype. But as the studio's new art director joined, they shifted directions a bit. The demo was meant to serve as a teaser for potential investors or as a foundation for a future Kickstarter campaign. In less than a year since forming the studio, the team began presenting their work to various publishers. Though still in a prototype phase, the demo was impressive, especially given the team's limited size and resources. Towards the end of 2021, they would meet with a brand new publisher, Kepler Interactive. And for those who don't know Kepler Interactive, they are a small indie publisher.
It's a British publisher. You're telling me this game is a product of French developers and British publisher? Ah, the things we can achieve as a society. Holy moly.
Founded in September of 2021. Kepler Interactive is co-owned by a group of independent game developers, and their
Hold on. Wait, did he say September? So they started hiring and building a team in 2020 and then found this developer in December of 2021. But this publisher didn't freaking exist until September of that year. This was probably one of their biggest first game pickups. What? This even feels more like fate, man.
Of 2021. Kepler Interactive is co-owned by a group of independent game developers, and their primary initiative is to help fund smaller indie games like Sifu, for example, and allow teams to have full creative freedom over their projects.
That's so
right
important.
Off the bat, the publisher and the development teams hit it off and quickly inked a deal to work together in order to ship Expedition 33.
That is so important, to have a publisher that respects your space as dev group and to trust you to deliver a product that will make some level of money. Oh my gosh, because usually, how many stories have we heard about bigger publishers like Ubisoft that just kind of crushes and controls everything in a game development cycle and then kills the game? That is the perfect storm, yeah.
Sandfall would use the extra funding rounds by Kepler to shift development from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5. Additionally, Kepler would also open the door for more popular voice actors to be brought onto the project.
Is of course, Ben Starr? I'm sorry for screaming. Is that Ben Starr? Ben Starr is in this? Clive Rossfield is here? What? He's one of my favorite voice actors. He voice acted as Clive Rossfield, the main character of Final Fantasy 16, which we also played on this channel. Oh my gosh! And then when I had this character debut in May of last year, Azure paid for a cameo message, which was about 2.5 minutes long from Ben Starr. I have a video of Ben Starr saying, Raelia, have a good re-debut. I didn't know he was in this. We haven't heard him yet, so I'm guessing we will have to meet more characters. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
5. Additionally, Kepler would also open the door for more popular voice actors to be brought onto the project. And of course, the small team of 12 people would grow to 22 people working on Expedition 33. Kepler Interactive and Sandfall would announce their partnership together in March of 2023. Additionally, around the same time, Microsoft would also pick up Expedition 33 as a day one Game Pass launch title.
Oh shit!
At this point, the game had financial backing, guaranteed exposure through Game Pass, successfully switched over to Unreal Engine 5, and greatly expanded their tiny development team, all within a year or two, while also simultaneously working on the actual game. With their new investments coming in, they were also able to upgrade their office with a full motion capture studio, and Kepler Interactive helped pull in a star-studded cast to help voice the main characters.
Hold on, give me a second. So their publisher Kepler, which was a new publishing company, was able to pull in that much investment, get them full motion tracking equipment, amazing, like, you know, very highly praised voice actors. I guess they were a little bit less well known back in the days, but like this is all stuff that an indie studio does not have access to, like a true indie studio with no connections to the industry. I think the real unsung heroes here, I know everyone's glazing, you know, the devs, everyone's glazing the composer and the writing. I think the real unsung heroes here are the marketing team and the legal team. How did you secure these deals? Those are vital for getting the word out there. You can't just have a good product and have nobody talk about it and have no money behind it. Like I want to know more about the business development team. That is really cool. A lot of true startups don't have this kind of connection.
The cast that Kepler was able to pull in is a bit wild. Gustav was played by none other than Charlie Cox, who you may know as Daredevil. Jennifer English played Mayel, who was Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3. Ben Starr played Verso, and he's also in Final Fantasy 16. Andy Serkis from, well, you know who he is. And the list just goes on and on, with even more incredible talent. The game was becoming something much bigger than just a great game with excellent gameplay. It was also shaping up to become an incredible narrative experience that arguably could be up there with the best movies of all time. As a side note, on the movie side, Kepler Interactive was also able to secure a live-action film for the franchise too.
What?
It's too early to say how good that will be.
There's a movie deal with this? Before the game even released, they got a movie deal with this? Who the hell is behind Kepler? It can't just be a group of ragtag devs that were like, oh yeah, let's make a random ass publishing company. They have real star power and connections in the industry. This goes deep. I don't care how the movie turns out, but at this point, I don't know if it's truly fit to say this is an indie game. Yes, it's an indie game, of course. It's a new studio, of course, with not a lot of people, of course. But this is not like, you know, 3 people starting a game in their basement. They have so many industry connections. What the heck?
But it is a fun fact. By the end of 2023, Sandfall Interactive would begin working on a debut trailer for Expedition 33. Since they had a partnership with Microsoft and were going to ship the game day 1 on Game Pass, they also had a spot in the Xbox Game Showcase in 2024. This is where they chose to reveal their passion project turned masterpiece to the world.
A lot of people probably paid attention to it because of that game show, and also because it's a day 1 game on the Game Pass, you know? You can be a good gamer, you can be a good VTuber and produce good content, have good music, but if nobody's playing it, it doesn't matter. You're gonna suffer a lot more than if you had a good exposure. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum.
Sandfall Interactive would reveal the game to the world in June of 2024. And right off the bat, everybody was enthralled by the world that Sandfall had introduced us to. Typically, when a game spends 6 years in development, we would consider it to be stuck in development hell, or
yeah, because you're talking about like however many hundreds of devs and millions of dollars in it. But for a studio like this, 6 years is nothing. 6 years is fast.
Case of too many cooks in the kitchen. However, with Sandfall Interactive and Expedition 33, a 6-year development cycle is actually a pretty remarkable turnaround.
Yeah!
I know it sounds a bit crazy to say, but just looking at all of the accomplishments the studio made within the development cycle really helps highlight this point. The first 2 years involved just a couple of folks playing around in Unreal Engine, to get a better
Spoilers.
feel of how the engine worked and creating a rapid prototype of Expedition 33. One that was a bit more Victorian and had
Quick,
utilized
close your
free
eyes, chat.
assets from the
Spoilers.
Unreal Marketplace. The next 2 years were spent growing the team, with more talent, bringing in specialized directors, and starting the process of securing a publishing deal that would help bring the game into the limelight. And the final 2 years were spent iterating upon their prototypes and creating a game with a laser-focused vision. A vision.
So they spent 2 years growing the team, but then during that time, they'll have to, you have to think about the logistics. They would have to post job postings, interview, hire people, train them. And these are all new developers. So like growing pains is a real thing. They wouldn't have 100% of their working time dedicated to developing the game. There would be more like developing the team. So they really only had maybe like 3 years, 3.5 to 4 years of actual development time. That's crazy.
That the entire team shared unilaterally. Not only was the team being built up during their 6-year development, but even their publisher was too.
Oh, okay.
The CEO of Sandfall really hit it out of the park when he said something along the lines of, "You can accomplish so much when working with a smaller publisher team." Kepler and Sandfall both had double-digit employees, so the CEOs found it really easy to interface with each other. Alongside the fact that the studio had full creative control, the relationship between the two companies was solely dedicated to crafting the best game they possibly could, with no middlemen trying to squeeze money out of the players. Just 2 months later, the team would put out a 6-minute gameplay reveal. This reveal would showcase all of the work that they had done thus far during development. At this point, the gameplay they showed off looked to be almost identical to the final version we would get.
Oh, this is a trailer. This is Flying Water, so we're right there right now. This looks
A
identical.
couple months later, so it's safe to say the work that remained at this point was bug fixing and minor UI changes.
It looks the UI looks a little bit less colorful, I think, than the actual game. I think the actual game has like glowing red plants, but this is very close.
By the end of 2024, the team had finally finished the core development of the game, and it was time to celebrate. They knew that the game would be releasing next year, and they anxiously waited fans to get their hands on their project. And to no surprise to anybody who's played Expedition 33, they absolutely crushed it. Not only was it a critical success with reviewers, but also gamers. Since release, the game has been in the top 10 most popular games on Steam alone. In just 12 days, the game sold over 2 million copies, and we can only imagine what the actual player count is if you factor in Game Pass.
2 million copies sold. Each one is about 50 USD. And then there's Game Pass, and then there's console, right? So like what, 5 million? Holy crap.
Story of this game's development is just
Now, what was the player count for Assassin's Creed, the new one?
crazy. The teams absolutely deserved their flowers in creating such a great journey.
This guy looks so French. I'm sorry. This took me out. This took me out of it. Oh my goodness.
With such a small team. But don't just take it from me. Here's the founder of Larian Studios, the developers of Baldur's Gate 3, predicting the success of Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
Baldur's Gate.
So it turns out that not only will I be the one who will know as first which game wins tonight, but I actually also know which game is going to win next year,
Ooh.
the year after, and the year after. Now, how do I know this? Well, an oracle told me. She said, change is coming.
She said it's going to be GTA 6 whenever it actually comes out.
The oracle told me that the game of the year 2025 was going to be made by a studio who found the formula to make it up here on stage. It's stupidly simple, but somehow it keeps on getting lost. Studio made their game because they wanted to make a game that they wanted to play themselves. They created it because it hadn't been created before. They didn't make it to increase market share. They didn't make it to serve as a brand. They didn't have to meet arbitrary sales targets or fear being laid off if they didn't meet those targets. And furthermore, the people in charge forbade them from cramming the game with anything whose only purpose was to increase revenue and didn't serve the game design. They knew that if you put the game and the team first, the revenue will follow. They were driven by idealism and wanted players to have fun. And they realized that if the developers didn't have fun, nobody was going to have any fun. They understood the value of respect, that if they treated their developers and players well, those same developers and players would forgive them when things didn't go as planned. But above all, they cared about their game because they loved games. It's really that simple, said the
Oh my
developer.
gosh, I'm tearing up. I'm tearing up. That was beautiful. Wait, these are like the devs, right? But this is not a random choir. This is the composer right here. So these are all the devs? Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that's the writer. That Asian girl is the writer. Oh, wow. I didn't know they could also sing. What can they not do? Ooh.
C'est vraiment une expérience qui a été très importante pour moi. J'ai pleuré pendant 2 jours, j'ai rigolé, c'était formidable.
Oh my god, I'm tearing up. That's gorgeous. What a beautiful video from Pounder McNasty.